Most of the human suffering in this world boils down to our fear of death. This is not surprising, given that the modern mythology stipulates that matter is primary, and basically all there is. If nothing exists beyond, beneath, above, whichever spatial metaphor you want to use here, the physical universe, then every physical and practical expression within its confines appears to be very important, such as gender, age, nationality, organizations, career, money, politics, laws, hospitals, formal education, formal science, and titles. Until they're not, because we all die. How unfair. The good news is that death is merely a transition from one state to another. Just like birth is. Death and birth are exactly the same kind of experience, just viewed from opposite angles. We come in and we go out. It is like a long breath. Suffering and the idea of an ultimate death both stem from the illusion of time. The above means that when we are afraid to die, we are actually afraid to go home. We desperately hold on to this temporary existence as if a temporary sojourn could ever be a true home. We persuade ourselves that the stage play we're in, this video game, this boot camp, is all we have. We anxiously pay attention to the sergeants of the boot camp who shout out their orders. One might even describe our predicament as a prison that we fear leaving. And this is actually a pertinent analogy, since this phenomenon is well documented. The psychology of it is well described in the wonderful film The Shawshank Redemption, which I'm sure many of you have seen. It's a fantastic movie. When I look at our non-acceptance of death as a transition, and our belief that it's final, and our unconscious rejection of home from a spiritual perspective, what I see is a collective Stockholm syndrome. If you don't know what a Stockholm syndrome is, check it up. A Stockholm syndrome, basically on a species level. We have developed an understanding, even a sympathy for our prison guards, who constantly lead us to believe that this physical world with its societal structure is all there is. And if we want to make the most of life, we'd better get out there and seize all the goodies that we can lay our hands on and reach for as desirable a position in the structure that we possibly can. Of course, we can't all acquire the same amount of things, and not everybody will be able to gain the most coveted positions. We learned this early on, and with that lesson comes another hard, quote-unquote, truth. Life is not easy. Who said that life should be easy? Some win, some lose, but hey, you just have to learn to bite the bullet and do the best of your situation. But here's the truth. The essence of life is actually very simple. Life is a continuum. Deep within, underneath that constant chaos of thoughts and feelings, you can sense, I think you can sense, that you simply are. You are conscious, you are consciousness itself. You experience, you are experience itself. Hence, you exist, and you can't not exist, because that's not an experience. This is all you can ever really, truly know for certain is real. Life unfolds from that point, from there. And that's all there is to it. All else are temporary mental or emotional constructs. Now, this physical experience is no doubt immensely important. And I mean, I can't say any more than anybody else exactly what the purpose is, but you can sense that there is a deep purpose behind it. And it is in many ways a marvelous adventure, but it's not the whole story, not even close. The best way to approach earthly life, I think, is with equanimous curiosity and joy, not as if it were dead serious all the time, because it's not. And death is an illusion anyway. Now, when we open the door to our infinity, a weight is lifted from our hearts. But when we dismiss this simple and self-evident, actually really self-evident inner knowing, life appears very complicated. And that is when we get the false idea that we lack something and we feel miserable and anxious. Neuroscientists have tried for decades to locate where in the brain consciousness is produced, to no avail, of course. It is in that futile physical search for meaning that we become depressed. Whether we try to find it in the brain, or by hoarding things. We all come into this strange and wondrous place with the inner truth intact. An inkling remains for a few years when we're very young children, but we gradually forget who we really are, and we identify with a name, a skill, a position, a story, basically, our life story that we cling to and think is real. For thousands of years, a plethora of societal structures have been imposed on us. The guardians of these structures, they might be teachers, doctors, politicians, civil servants, lawyers, soldiers, journalists, researchers, priests, parents. They are themselves, for the most part, involuntary pawns in the game. At least the vast majority of them. A basic prerequisite for upholding this elaborate matrix is the idea that humans are at the core selfish and unreliable, which is why a structural order is needed. We learn that rules and regulations keep this flawed species in check to the benefit of us all. This is a tragic deception. This is quite frankly a big lie. You might even say this is the big lie that we're told. And we're all told this. Someone might object that people were even more scared of death a few hundred years ago, before the introduction of a physicalist worldview, when almost everybody was religious, at least formally. Well, this might be true to some extent, but the difference would be in degree, not in kind, because that religiosity, within quotes, was a very integral part of the matrix. In some ways, the church, for instance, was more materialistic than modern-day atheism, whose proponents emphasize humanism. The church was deeply in cahoots with the secular powers. Priests often told people that God needed them to obey the lords of the world as well. Adhering to a dogmatic old-school religion is all about pleasing an external God and acquiescing to the hierarchy of his representatives on earth. And if you don't, you know which place you will be sent to when you die. The realization that we're all eternal sparks of God, that God's source, or the one consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that we're all actually that we are all parts of that, part of that. That is the most forbidden knowledge of all in the traditional Abrahamic religions. The most forbidden truth and knowledge of all. Now, wait, didn't we liberate ourselves from all that when science broke with the religion a few hundred years ago? Well, it certainly looked like an attempt to do that. But did we use our new scientific approach to find our way back to our true essence, to our core of natural happiness? We did not. We used science to drag us in the opposite direction, away from a system of outer oppression to a system of inner oppression called materialism. So either your life is miserable because you're tormented by the constant condemnations of God and the church, or your life's miserable because you feel the meaninglessness of being a randomly assembled flesh robot. In both cases, you feel unfree, you feel imprisoned. In the latter case, you may find temporary relief in embracing the system and its rulers, who tell you that all will be well if you just adjust a little bit more to fit into the intricate social structures. So you try once more to do just that. And to make the process a little bit smoother and less painful, you choose to sympathize with your prison guards. This is psychologically very understandable, as long as you don't know that there is an alternative. But imagine the sea change in your perspective on life when you realize that you can break out of it whenever you want. That all you've been told and told yourself about your identity is a chimera. That the essence of you is completely free.